tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. In the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name's Aaron. Let's begin.
The shuttle Venture descended through Earth's atmosphere with the smooth precision of coalition engineering. Through the reinforced viewports, the Amazon basin spread below, and endless green tapestry broken only by the silver threading of rivers. Instructor Ephraim Sturgis stood at the forward console, watching the telemetry. Behind him, his 3 students secured their equipment with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Final approach to designated safe zone Alpha 7, the shuttle's AI announced. Touchdown in 90 seconds. Sturgis turned to face his charges. The Alliance Exchange Program's capstone course had become a trophy hunt for the ambitious, a way to prove superiority over the galaxy's newest members. These 3 had earned their spots through academic excellence and political maneuvering. Whether they'd earned them through actual competence remained to be seen.
"Listen up,"
Sturgis said, his voice cutting through the shuttle's subtle background hum.
"We're touching down in one of Earth's primary tropical rainforests. Humidity ranges from 70 to 100%. Temperature averages 30 Celsius. Gravity is standard 1G Earth normal. Your suits will handle it, but understand, this isn't a garden world. This is Earth. Questions?"
Corian's translator unit flickered to life before the Glypton even opened what passed for his mouth. The device rendered his chittering harmonics into clipped, precise standard.
"Instructor Sturgis, I've reviewed the environmental data extensively. The biosphere appears remarkably disordered, inefficient. No clear ecological hierarchy, just chaotic competition for resources. I'm surprised humanity managed to achieve technological sophistication in such conditions."
Sturgis's expression didn't change.
"Noted, Cadet Corian."
The Glypton's silica-based exoskeleton caught the shuttle's internal lighting, its slightly translucent, porous surface refracting light into subtle patterns. His species had evolved on a world of precise seasons and predictable cycles. Everything had its place, its time, its function. Earth's messy reality clearly offended his sensibilities. Clune, by contrast, had all 4 of his primary appendages occupied with scanning equipment, his Orphean features animated with barely contained excitement. The pale amphibious being practically vibrated with curiosity. His species had evolved on a world of shallow seas and tidal zones, with gravity close to Earth's standard. Water, not weight, had shaped his people.
"Instructor, the preliminary biodiversity readings are extraordinary. The density of unique species per cubic kilometer exceeds Orphean rainforest analogs by a factor of—"
"Later, Cadet Clune,"
Sturgis interrupted gently.
"First we land, then we learn."
The 3rd student, Zorik, hadn't spoken since boarding. The Kith seldom did. He stood perfectly still near the rear of the passenger compartment, his dense, stone-like physiology making him look like a statue carved from obsidian. His species came from a high-gravity world of deep canyons and ancient stone forests. He watched the view screen with eyes like polished agate, taking in the immense trees of the Amazon with something that might have been recognition. The Venture touched down with barely a whisper, its landing struts adjusting automatically to the uneven jungle floor. Through the viewports, the rainforest pressed close, a wall of green so dense it seemed almost aggressive in its vitality.
"Suit check,"
Sturgis ordered.
"Clune?"
"Envirosuits fully operational. Atmospheric processors online. Thermal regulation nominal. Gravity compensators at 15% output. All biometric sensors green."
"Corian."
"Suit status optimal. All systems functioning at peak efficiency as expected."
"Zorik."
The Kith's response came through his translator as a low rumble.
"Ready."
Sturgis pulled on his own gear. Simple, rugged clothing made from synthetic fabrics, reinforced at stress points, designed for function over form. No envirosuit, no atmospheric processors, no gravity assistance. Just boots, cargo pants, and a jacket with too many pockets. He caught Corian watching him with what might have been disdain.
"Your equipment seems minimal, Instructor,"
the Glypton observed.
"It's adequate," Sturgis replied. "Ramp down. Let's go meet Earth."
The shuttle's rear ramp descended with a pneumatic hiss, and the Amazon rushed in to greet them. Even filtered through their suits' processors, the students reacted. Clune's scanning equipment chirped frantically, trying to catalog the sensory explosion. Corian's translator picked up the slight hitch in his breathing. Surprise quickly mastered. Zorik simply stepped forward, his heavy footfalls leaving impressions in the soft jungle floor. Sturgis walked down the ramp without hesitation, breathing in the thick, heavy air, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because for him, it was.
"Welcome to Earth,"
he said. The jungle around them was alive in a way the students' homeworlds simply weren't. Sound layered upon sound, bird calls, insect drones, the rustle of unseen creatures in the canopy, the distant rush of water. The vegetation grew in aggressive profusion, every available niche filled, every surface covered in some form of life. Vines strangled trees that in turn hosted entire ecosystems in their branches. Fungi erupted from rotting logs. Something small and jewel-bright flashed past Clune's head, causing him to flinch.
"Hummingbird,"
Sturgis said.
"Heart rate up to 1,200 beats per minute during flight. Burns energy so fast it has to feed constantly or it dies. You'll see a lot of things like that here, living right on the edge of what's physically possible."
He led them into the jungle proper, following a path that wasn't quite a path, more a suggestion of slightly less dense vegetation. Every few meters he would stop, point something out.
"That frog, the bright blue and yellow one, see it?"
Clune's scanner immediately locked on.
Dendrobates tinctorius, poison dart frog. I'm reading alkali toxins in the skin secretions that...
His voice dropped slightly.
Scanner confirms. Dermal exposure simulation projects total nervous system collapse in 4 minutes, 12 seconds.
4 minutes if you're lucky, Sturgis said. "Pretty little thing, isn't it? Evolution's way of saying, don't touch. And that vine there?"
He gestured to an innocent-looking plant with heart-shaped leaves.
"Brushed up against that last year. Raised welts for a week. Felt like my skin was on fire."
Corian's translator conveyed perfect dismissiveness.
My suit's AI maintains a real-time threat database. It would have warned me to avoid contact with any genuinely dangerous organism. These seem like manageable risks, easily mitigated with proper technology.
"Good to know,"
Sturgis said neutrally. They reached the base camp within the hour, a small clearing where the Venture's advanced deployment had set up a prefabricated shelter. Solar panels, atmospheric processors, a climate-controlled interior. It was as much a bubble of Coalition civilization as the suits the students wore. Inside, Sturgis pulled up holographic displays showing Earth's geological and biological timeline. Mass extinction events marked the chart like a brutal heartbeat. Asteroid impacts, volcanic mega-eruptions, ice ages, atmospheric catastrophes. 5 major extinctions. Dozens of minor ones. Each time, life had clawed its way back from the edge.
"This,"
Sturgis said, gesturing to the display,
"is why we are the way we are. Humanity didn't evolve on a garden world. We evolved in a shooting gallery, on a planet that tried to kill us in new and creative ways every few million years. Super predators, climate swings, disease, volcanic winters. Earth doesn't coddle its children."
Clune was taking notes furiously, his equipment recording everything.
Fascinating. So human adaptability is a direct response to
getting kicked in the teeth by our own planet repeatedly, Sturgis said. "We got good at bouncing back, at improvising, at making do with whatever we had on hand because the alternative was extinction."
Corian's skepticism was palpable.
With respect, instructor, that philosophy seems primitive. True advancement lies in controlling one's environment, not merely surviving it. My homeworld's ecosystem is carefully managed, optimized. We don't suffer the chaos you're describing.
"That's one way to do it,"
Sturgis acknowledged.
The superior way,
Corian pressed.
Adaptation to chaos is simply a less efficient form of...
He stopped. They all did. A sound had crept into the awareness of everyone in the shelter. It wasn't loud, not yet. Just a faint hum, barely audible. More felt than heard. Like standing near high-tension power lines or the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. Sturgis's expression changed. The easy instructional demeanor vanished. replaced by something sharp and focused. He moved to the shelter's entrance, scanning the sky through the canopy.
Sir?
Clune ventured.
Is something...
Quiet, Sturgis said, not harshly, but with absolute authority. The hums continued, growing incrementally. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, resonating in the bones, in the teeth. Zorik shifted his weight, the first real movement he'd made in over an hour. Sturgis's jaw tightened. He'd heard this sound before. Years ago, during the geological surveys of the Andes. Right before.
Equipment check,
He said sharply.
all of you, now. Tell me your suit status.
Clune's appendages flew across his scanner's interface.
All systems nominal. No anomalies detected in...
The hum crescendoed slightly, taking on a rhythmic quality. Pulse, pulse, pulse. Sturgis's eyes widened with sudden, terrible understanding.
Oh no,
He said quietly, then louder, urgent.
Out! Everyone out of the shelter, now!
The wave hit like a physical force, though nothing actually touched them. It wasn't sound, wasn't light. More like the sensation of pressure equalizing, of something vast and invisible passing through matter as if it weren't there. Clune's scanner died mid-chirp, its display flickering to black. The base camp's solar panels went dark. Inside the shelter, every holographic display collapsed simultaneously, leaving only the ambient light filtering through the jungle canopy. Corian's suit display blinked out.
What? My interfaces...
His translator cut off mid-word, then stuttered back to life with a sound like grinding gears, running on a minimal mechanical backup system that produced barely intelligible, static-filled translations.
Non-functional. Diagnostics offline. This is impossible.
The hum they'd heard before intensified, dropping in pitch, becoming something felt in the chest cavity rather than heard. The ground itself seemed to vibrate with it. Sturgis was already moving, his head snapping toward the ridge that loomed above their camp, a wall of layered stone and vegetation that rose perhaps 80 meters. His face had gone pale.
The pulse,
He breathed, then louder, urgent.
the pulse, the saturated soil, the fractured rock. The whole ridge is going to fail. Run!
He pointed toward a massive boulder formation about 50 meters away, partially sheltered by the canopy.
There, now!
The rumble built from deep underground, a bass note that made teeth ache and vision blur. Birds erupted from the canopy in a panicked cloud. Something in the jungle screamed, a primal, animal sound of pure terror. Clune didn't question, didn't analyze. He ran. His suit's gravity compensators were dead, but that wasn't his problem. His homeworld's gravity was close to Earth's. The issue was his body itself. Amphibious limbs designed for water and tidal mud, now churning awkwardly across uneven jungle floor, fighting terrain his physiology had never been meant to handle at speed. Quarian stood frozen for a crucial second, his methodical mind trying to process the impossible. His suit's AI was supposed to warn him. His threat assessment matrix was supposed to...
Move!
Sturgis grabbed the Glypton's arm and hauled him forward with strength that Quarian's databases said a human shouldn't possess under standard atmospheric conditions. Zorik was already running. His high-gravity physiology meant Earth's 1G felt light, almost buoyant. He covered the distance in powerful strides, his stone-like feet crushing vegetation with each impact. The rumble became a roar. Sturgis dragged Quarian along, practically carrying him. Clune scrambled ahead, his amphibious body not designed for terrestrial sprinting, but moving nonetheless on pure fear. The boulder formation loomed closer. Weathered granite, ancient and solid, not the sedimentary stone that made up the ridge. Behind them, the roar escalated into something beyond sound, beyond comprehension. The air itself seemed to shudder. The ridge gave way. It didn't collapse so much as flow. Millions of tons of liquefied soil and fractured rock, suddenly obeying gravity in a catastrophic slope failure. Trees that had stood for centuries tilted, then fell, their root systems torn free. The sound was apocalyptic, grinding stone, splintering wood, the wet rush of earth turned to slurry. Sturgis shoved Quarian behind the granite formation, and threw himself down beside the others. Zorik had already taken position in the sheltered lee of the rock, his dense body serving as an additional windbreak. Clune pressed himself against the stone, all four appendages wrapped around his body in an instinctive protective curl. The landslide hit. A wall of churning debris, rock, mud, vegetation, water, swept through the clearing where their camp had stood. The prefabricated shelter lasted perhaps 2 seconds before it was crushed and carried away. The Venture, with its reinforced hull and Coalition-grade alloys, survived marginally longer before disappearing under the avalanche of liquefied earth. The granite formation shuddered under the impact of the slide but held. Debris splashed around its edges, tree trunks the size of shuttles tumbling past. But the ancient stone stood firm. Mud sprayed over them in sheets, coating everything, filling the air with the smell of torn earth and crushed vegetation. Then, gradually, the roar diminished. The flow slowed. The grinding chaos settled into the wet, heavy sound of mud sliding to rest. Silence descended, but not real silence. The jungle's ambient noise continued, already resuming its chaotic symphony. But the mechanical sounds they'd lived with since landing were gone. No power hum, no suit system alerts, no shuttle engines on standby. Nothing. Sturgis was the first to move, slowly emerging from behind the boulder. Mud coated him from head to foot, and he wiped his eyes clear with equally muddy hands. He looked at where their camp had been. The clearing was gone. In its place was a slope of fresh debris, gray-brown mud, shattered trees, chunks of stone ranging from pebbles to boulders. The Venture was completely buried. If Sturgis hadn't recognized the terrain, he wouldn't have known anything had been there at all.
Is everyone?
He started, then coughed, spat mud.
Everyone alive?
Alive,
Zorik rumbled. His stone-like physiology had weathered the debris spray better than the others, though even he was covered in muck. Clune uncurled slowly, patting himself down with trembling appendages.
Yes, alive, I think. Instructor, what was that? What happened?
Corian pulled himself upright, his silica-based exoskeleton now caked with drying mud that dulled its refractive properties. His translator sputtered, glitched, then stabilized with obvious effort.
Seismic event. Must have been. But the timing, the pulse, the correlation is statistically...
Not random.
Sturgis finished. He was already checking the students over with quick, practiced efficiency, looking for injuries, for breaches in their suits.
Tectonic resonance pulse. Natural phenomenon. Rare, but it happens. The frequency destabilizes saturated soil and fractures unstable rock. Yesterday's storm soaked the ridge. The pulse liquefied the soil layers and shattered the rock formations. Total slope failure.
He moved to Clune, checking suit seals.
You okay? Any breaches?
No breaches detected, but my systems...
Clune looked down at his suit's display panel. It showed only a single faint indicator light. Life support backup.
Everything's dead. The pulse did it.
EMP effect.
Sturgis confirmed.
The pulse generates a massive electromagnetic discharge. Fries anything with complex circuitry.
He checked Corian next. Then Zorik.
Your suit's primary systems are gone, but the backup life support is mechanical, redundant. It'll keep you breathing and regulate core temperature. You're not going to die.
Not going to...
Corian's translator rendered his distress imperfectly.
Instructor, without our suit's full functionality, we cannot survive in this environment. The toxins, the pathogens, the atmospheric composition...
Your backup filters are working,
Sturgis said firmly.
They're mechanical, basic, catching particulates, toxins, keeping you from inhaling anything that'll kill you. But they don't process volatile compounds. You're breathing filtered air, but you're smelling earth raw for the first time.
Corian paused, realized he was, in fact, breathing safely. But something was still wrong. Something was... The smell hit him. Without his suit's atmospheric processors to sanitize the volatile organic compounds, Earth's chemical signature came at him unfiltered. Ozone from the electrical discharge in the upper atmosphere. The thick, cloying scent of wet decay, 1,000 things rotting and composting in the jungle's eternal cycle, pollen by the billions, a yellow dust that had coated every surface, the sharp green smell of torn vegetation, animal musk, fungal spores, the mineral tang of freshly disturbed earth. It was overwhelming. It was revolting. It was more sensory input than Corian's olfactory system had ever processed simultaneously. He staggered backward, his translator catching something between a retch and a shocked gasp. Clune wasn't faring much better. His amphibious respiratory system pulled in air through membranes that had only ever known filtered, regulated atmospheres. Now they tasted everything. The complexity, the chaos, the sheer overwhelming density of Earth's chemical signature. And the humidity. Without thermal regulation beyond basic life support, they felt it fully. That oppressive, clinging wetness in the air. Not dangerous, but deeply uncomfortable. It pressed against them, made their skin feel simultaneously clammy and sticky. But it was the sound that broke Corian's composure completely. His suit's audio processors had been sanitizing and filtering the jungle's noise, reducing it to manageable levels. Now the full, raw cacophony hit him without mercy. Insects. Thousands upon thousands of insects, each with their own chirp, buzz, drone, click. Birds calling in overlapping layers, whistles, caws, trills. Something howling in the distance. The rustle of leaves moved by creatures unseen. Water dripping, wind through the canopy. And beneath it all, a living, breathing hum that seemed to come from the jungle itself. It was chaos. Pure, unfiltered, deafening chaos.
Make it stop,
Corian said, his voice strangled by his malfunctioning translator.
Instructor, the noise, the smells, it's too much. My systems can't.
Your systems are fine,
Sturgis said, not unkindly, but with absolute firmness.
Your suit systems are dead. You're experiencing Earth the way it actually is, the way I experience it every day.
He looked at each of them in turn. 3 students who had boarded the Venture expecting a controlled, manageable field trip to a primitive world. 3 aliens whose entire experience of Earth had been filtered, sanitized, regulated by technology that was now slag.
Welcome,
Sturgis said quietly,
to the real Earth.
Clune made a sound that didn't translate well. Something between overwhelmed fascination and mounting panic. Zorik stood silent, but even his stone-like features seemed somehow strained. Corian just stood there, coated in mud, his silica-based body trembling slightly as his neural system tried to process sensory input it had never been designed to handle. The jungle around them continued its indifferent symphony. Birds returned to their territories. Insects resumed their eternal drone. The landslide's debris steamed gently in the afternoon heat, already being colonized by opportunistic fungi. Sturgis pulled his pack off his back, one of the few pieces of equipment they had left. It had survived because it was simple. Fabric, mechanical closures, no electronics. He checked its contents methodically.
Right,
he said.
Here's the situation. We're alive, but we're stranded. The Venture is buried under tons of mud. Our camp is gone. Your suits are running on backup, which means you've got life support and basic thermal regulation, but nothing else. No communications, no navigation, no threat detection, no gravity assist.
He looked at each of them.
We're 200 kilometers from the nearest human settlement. In the Amazon, in the wet season. With what I'm carrying and what's in your emergency packs.
Corian's translator managed to convey pure horror.
That's impossible. We'll die.
Sturgis's expression was unreadable.
Maybe, but probably not.
He shouldered his pack.
Let's find out just how adaptable you really are.
Sturgis crouched beside his pack and pulled out 2 items that made Clune's eyes widen. A laminated paper map and a magnetic compass in a battered brass case.
Fascinating,
Clune breathed.
Pre-navigational exploration artifacts. I've only read about such things in historical archives.
Paper,
Sturgis confirmed, spreading the map.
And yes, this compass is about 60 years old. Inherited it from my grandfather.
He tapped the map.
We're here. There's a decommissioned emergency beacon 70 kilometers northeast. 3 days hard trek. It'll have basic supplies. Water purification, emergency rations, maybe a manual radio.
70 kilometers.
Corian's translator struggled with the dust that had infiltrated his systems, adding static to his words.
In 3 days. That's... Instructor, the logical course of action is to remain here. Our absence will be noted. Standard protocol requires...
Requires a check-in that isn't going to happen,
Sturgis interrupted.
Our communication blackout won't trigger any alarms for another 2 days. The Venture's beacon is buried under tons of mud. No one knows exactly where we went down, and by the time they start looking, we'll be off-grid for nearly a week.
He glanced up at the sky, visible in patches through the canopy.
And we've got about 6 hours before that storm hits.
Clune followed his gaze. To him, the sky looked no different than it had all day. The same diffuse brightness filtering through clouds and leaves.
I don't see...
Look at the pressure change and how the leaves are hanging,
Sturgis said.
Feel the wind direction shift? That smell in the air. Petrichor mixing with ozone. And watch the insects.
He gestured to the jungle around them.
They're taking to shelter. The birds have stopped calling. Earth tells you what's coming if you know how to listen.
Corian's silica-based body somehow managed to convey skepticism despite its rigid structure.
You're proposing we navigate 70 kilometers through hostile terrain using pre-technological implements and environmental... intuition?
I'm proposing we walk to safety using tools that work and knowledge that doesn't require batteries,
Sturgis said flatly. He was already repacking his kit.
We leave in 10 minutes. Drink water now. We'll need to ration it carefully.
The trek began badly. Corian discovered gravity compensation wasn't just convenience. It was survival. His homeworld pulled at 0.7 G. Earth's relentless 1 G was crushing. Every step required conscious effort, his legs trembling with constant strain. Sturgis set a measured pace, stopping frequently. Zorik managed well. His high-gravity homeworld meant Earth felt light. Clune struggled with terrain his amphibious body wasn't designed for, but persevered, his 4 appendages distributing weight more effectively than bipedal locomotion. But Corian fell further behind with each kilometer. 2 hours in, Sturgis called a rest stop beside a small stream. Corian collapsed against a tree trunk, his breathing labored. His silica-based exoskeleton showing stress fractures from the repeated impacts of his stumbling gait. Corian sucked another mouthful of suit rations through the feeding tube and forced it down, nutrient paste that tasted like industrial lubricant but kept him moving.
This is impossible, he panted. I cannot. My body was not designed for...
Your body is adapting,
Sturgis said, filling their water containers from the stream, after treating them with tablets from his emergency kit.
It just hurts while it does it.
Corian's frustration boiled over. He lashed out at a thick vine hanging near his head, striking it with more force than he'd intended. The impact tore through. Not just the vine, his suit sealed too. The vine's sharp, rough edge slicing the fabric at his wrist. He felt it immediately, a shock of humid jungle air against his silica-based skin, where there should have been only controlled atmosphere. The vine split above him. A cloud of fine yellow-white pollen exploded from the ruptured stem, billowing down directly into his face. White foam erupted from the damaged wrist seal. Mechanical sealing compound, pressure activated, no electronics required. It spread fast, hardening on contact, trying to seal the breach. Too late. Corian had gasped at the first touch of unfiltered air, an involuntary sound of shock. The pollen was already inside his suit, a yellow haze in the space between his face and the helmet's inner surface. His next breath pulled it deep into his respiratory system. Unfiltered, unprocessed, pure plant matter interfacing directly with alien biochemistry. For a moment, nothing happened. The Corian's translator made a sound like choking static. His body convulsed once, twice.
What did he hit?
Sturgis was already moving, examining the damaged vine.
I'm fine,
Corian managed.
Just pollen.
He looked down at his wrist. at the white foam seal that had tried, and failed, to protect him.
My suit. The breach.
Urtica dioica variant,
Sturgis muttered, recognizing the plant.
Damn it. How much did you breathe in?
I don't... Some. Not much.
Corian's translator was having increasing difficulty with his speech.
Feeling... strange. Hot.
30 minutes later, they had to stop completely. Corian was feverish, his silica-based body radiating heat it shouldn't have been capable of generating. His respiratory system, incompatible with Earth biology but forced to interface with it through his compromised suit, was rejecting the foreign proteins violently.
Can't breathe properly, he gasped. Suit, medical, systems.
Are useless,
Sturgis finished. He was scanning the nearby vegetation with an intensity that made Clune nervous.
Instructor, we need to administer antihistamines, corticosteroids. Surely your emergency kit has basic pharmaceutical supplies that...
would be designed for human biology, Sturgis said. Corian's biochemistry is silicon-based. Human medicine might kill him faster than the pollen.
He found what he was looking for. A plant with broad, serrated leaves growing in the shade of a massive tree.
But this won't.
He picked several leaves, examining them carefully, then pulled a knife from his belt and cut into the plant's stem, collecting the clear sap that oozed out.
What are you doing?
Clune's voice was pitched high with stress.
That's a completely unscientific approach. We need prior medical intervention, controlled pharmaceutical compounds with known efficacy rates.
I'm using medicine that's been around for thousands of years,
Sturgis said. He was chewing the leaves now, his jaw working steadily. Clune made a sound of revulsion.
The compound in this plant counteracts the proteins in the pollen. It's a natural evolutionary arms race. The pollen evolved to deter herbivores. This plant evolved a defense against that specific chemical attack.
He spat the chewed leaves into his palm, a green pulpy mass that made all three students recoil. Without ceremony, he applied it to Corian's neck and wrists, where his suit's seals allowed access to his porous silica-based exoskeleton. The organic compounds would absorb through the permeable surface.
This is barbaric, Corian wheezed. Primitive, putting organic matter directly on
your skin, yes,
Sturgis said. He was cutting the plant's root now, sectioning it into pieces.
Clune, I need you to start a fire. There's a fire starter in my pack. Get some dry tinder. Look for dead leaves under fallen logs. They'll be protected from the moisture.
A fire? How is combustion going to...
Do it,
Sturgis ordered. His tone left no room for argument. 20 minutes later, water was boiling in a metal cup over a small smoky fire. Sturgis added the root sections, letting them steep until the water turned a dark amber. The smell was bitter, medicinal. He let it cool slightly, then approached Corian.
I'm putting this in your suit's hydration bladder. Don't open anything. Use your internal drinking tube.
Corian looked at the steaming cup with something approaching horror.
You want me to ingest unknown plant compounds based on... what? Empirical observation? Historical precedent? This could poison me.
The pollen already is poisoning you,
Sturgis said flatly.
This is the antidote. Your choice.
Corian looked at the tea, then at his trembling appendages, felt the fire in his respiratory system. He nodded weakly. Sturgis located the hydration port on Corian's suit, a small access valve near the shoulder, and carefully poured the amber liquid into the external reservoir.
All of it. Drink slowly.
The sound Corian made through his translator suggested the taste was exactly as vile as the smell promised, but he drank. They waited. Clune monitored Corian's vital signs as best he could with his own senses. Zorik sat motionless, watching. Sturgis simply waited with the patience of someone who knew that nature moved at its own pace. An hour passed. Corian's fever broke. His breathing eased. The heat radiating from his silica-based body diminished to normal levels.
How?
Corian's translator conveyed genuine confusion.
The chemical compounds shouldn't have been compatible with my biochemistry. The delivery method was completely non-sterile. There was no dosage calculation, no controlled administration, but it worked, Sturgis said quietly.
Because I knew what plant caused your reaction, and I knew what plant counteracts it. Knowledge, that's all. Knowledge that exists in my head, not in a computer database.
Clune was staring at his instructor with new eyes.
You've memorized the pharmaceutical properties of Earth's flora?
Some of it. Enough to keep someone alive in the field.
Sturgis was already packing up.
We need to move. Storm's getting closer.
They made it another 5 kilometers before the sky opened up. It started with wind. Not the gentle breeze that had played through the canopy all day, but something savage and directed. Trees bent, branches snapped. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in as many minutes. Then came the rain. It wasn't weather. It was assault. Water fell in sheets so dense that visibility dropped to meters. Thunder cracked with physical force, close enough that they felt it in their chests. Lightning turned the jungle into a strobing nightmare of impossible shadows and blinding white light.
There!
Sturgis shouted over the roar, pointing toward a rock face barely visible through the deluge.
Cave! Move!
They stumbled through the storm, fighting wind that tried to push them off their feet, rain that pounded like fists. Sturgis led them around the rock face to where water cascaded down a thundering waterfall, and behind it, a narrow opening in the stone. The cave was small, barely large enough for all 4 of them, but it was dry and sheltered from the wind. They collapsed inside, water streaming from their clothes and suits, exhausted and shaking. Outside, the storm raged. Lightning struck close enough that the thunder was instantaneous, a physical concussion that made the stone around them vibrate. The rain intensified until it seemed impossible that the atmosphere could hold more water, then intensified further. The students had never experienced anything like it. Their homeworlds had weather, but controlled, predictable. This was chaos. This was a planet flexing its power, reminding them that they existed only at its sufferance. They huddled together for warmth as the temperature continued to drop. Zorik's dense body radiated heat, and the others pressed close despite themselves. Outside, the fury continued unabated. Hours passed. The storm showed no signs of weakening. As the students finally succumbed to fitful, exhausted sleep, Sturgis remained awake. He pulled out his map, creasing it carefully in the dim red glow of a chem light from his pack. His fingers traced their route, what they'd covered, what remained. For a moment, just a fleeting second, doubt crept in. He was one man, one human, with tools that most of the galaxy considered museum pieces, responsible for 3 lives on a planet that showed no mercy even to its native children. What if the beacon was more damaged than he remembered? What if they couldn't make the distance? What if another disaster struck? A flash flood, a fallen tree, infection? A memory surfaced, unbidden. 2 prospectors on Ganymede 15 years ago. He'd been 6 hours too late. Just 6 hours. Their emergency beacon had been weaker than it should have been, and he'd searched the wrong crater first. By the time he'd found them, the cold had done its work. He wouldn't be late this time. He looked at the sleeping students. Corian still recovering from his allergic reaction. Clune overwhelmed by sensory input he had no framework to process. Zorik, stoic but undoubtedly struggling in his own way. He pushed the doubt down, deep into the place where he kept all the other fears that came with being human on Earth. Folded the map, checked the compass one more time. Outside, lightning flashed, thunder answered. The storm raged on. But inside the cave, they were alive. And tomorrow, they would walk again. That was enough. It had to be. The 3rd day dawned humid and oppressive. They'd made good time. Corian's breathing had stabilized. Clune had stopped flinching at every sound. The sensory assault had dulled to merely unbearable. Sturgis checked his compass.
5 more kilometers. We'll be there by mid-afternoon.
They pressed on. Corian had stopped complaining. He simply walked, 1 foot in front of the other. Gravity be damned.
They were perhaps 2 kilometers from their destination when Zorik stopped. Not slowed, not paused, stopped completely, his dense body going absolutely still in a way that made Sturgis's instincts scream warning. His heavy hand descended on his shoulder with enough force to make him stagger.
Zorik,
He said quietly.
what is it?
The kith didn't answer immediately. His species communicated as much through posture and stillness as through words. His entire body was oriented slightly behind and to their left, head tilted in a way that suggested he was listening, but not with his ears. For the others, the ground was just ground. For Zorik, it was a drumhead. Through the soles of his stone-like feet, he felt what they could not. The rhythmic weighted press of 4 paws, each impact sending tremors through soil and root. The subtle displacement spoke of muscle and bone and mass, of a heavy, predatory patience that had been matching their pace for kilometers. The spacing of the impacts told him gait, the depth told him weight, the consistency told him intent.
Something follows.
His translator finally rumbled.
Large, heavy, pacing us for the last hour. I feel its steps through the ground.
Sturgis went very still himself. Zorik's homeworld was 3 times Earth's gravity. His people had evolved to sense the minute vibrations of stone shifting, of predators moving across distant ridges. If he said something was tracking them, something was tracking them.
How large?
He asked.
Larger than you, heavier than me, moves with purpose, not random foraging. It has chosen us.
Clune's appendages drew in tight against his body.
Instructor, can we?
No, Sturgis said flatly.
We can't outrun it, and we definitely can't fight it.
His mind was already working through options, running calculations of speed versus distance, terrain versus tactics.
But we don't have to do either.
He pulled out his map, studied the topography. A ravine should be coming up. Narrow, steep-sided. He'd planned to skirt around it, but now...
This way,
he said,
quick but quiet. Don't run.
The ravine was perfect, about 4 meters wide, with sheer stone walls. An ancient stream bed, now choked with fallen timber. Sturgis examined the terrain. A massive log lay on the ravine's upper edge. Below, a natural choke point.
Clune, gather vines as thick as your appendage. Zorik, help me position this log. Corian, take watch.
They worked with frantic efficiency. The log was enormous, but Zorik's high-gravity strength made the difference. They levered it into position, balanced precariously. Sturgis wound vines around the log, creating tension lines that held it in place. Physics and leverage. The log became a deadfall.
The bait,
Sturgis said, pulling a sealed ration pack from his kit. Precious food, but he wouldn't need it if he was dead. He placed it at the choke point below, tearing it open to let the concentrated smells drift on the air.
Instructor,
Corian said quietly. His translator somehow conveyed tension despite its mechanical nature.
I see it. Through the trees. Large, feline structure. Definitely tracking us.
everyone across,
Sturgis ordered.
down into the ravine, through the choke point, up the far side. Move.
They descended into the ravine, sliding down the loose stone and dirt of the near wall. The ration pack sat in the middle of the choke point, innocuous and deadly in its simplicity. The vines stretched back up to the log, invisible against the forest debris. They were halfway up the far wall when the predator arrived. It emerged from the jungle like a shadow given form. A jaguar, one of Earth's apex predators. Easily 160 kilograms, at the extreme upper range of its species. Its coat a pattern of rosettes that made it seem to flicker in and out of existence among the vegetation. Scars traced its flanks and shoulders, old wounds from prey that had fought back and lost. Its head was broad and powerful, built for a crushing bite. Its eyes caught the dim light, reflecting it back in pale gold. It stopped at the ravine's edge. For a long, terrible moment, it simply stood there, utterly still. Its head moved slowly, methodically, scanning the terrain, testing the air with flared nostrils. The students froze on the far wall, barely breathing. Corian's hand slipped on the loose stone, sending a few pebbles tumbling down. The sound was impossibly loud. The jaguar's head snapped toward the movement. It watched the pebbles fall with predatory focus, calculating, analyzing. Then its gaze swept across the ravine, past the ration pack, past the choke point, directly to where 4 shapes clung to the opposite wall. It knew they were there. The predator's lips pulled back slightly, revealing teeth designed for shearing through hide and bone. It had made its decision. The question was simply whether the easy meal below was worth the effort, or whether it should pursue the larger prey that had stupidly trapped itself in a ravine. The jaguar took a step forward, then another, moving with liquid grace down into the ravine, its massive paws finding purchase on stone with barely a sound. It approached the ration pack, not directly but in a wide arc, never taking its eyes fully off the students above. Its tail lashed once, twice. Predatory excitement barely contained. 5 meters from the bait. 4. It stopped again, lowered its head, scented the ration pack with obvious suspicion. This was wrong, that posture said. Food doesn't appear in ravines. Food doesn't sit in convenient open spaces. But hunger was hunger, and the smell was overwhelming. The jaguar's ears swiveled, listening for any sign of danger. Its muscles coiled, ready to spring away at the slightest threat. Slowly, deliberately, it reached out one massive paw and batted at the ration pack, testing it. The pack tumbled. Nothing happened. The predator's shoulders relaxed slightly. It lowered its head, opened its jaws. "Now," Sturgis whispered. He pulled the release vine. The log fell. It came down like divine judgment, the massive timber crashing against the ravine's choke point with a sound like the world breaking. The impact sent shock waves through the stone. Smaller logs and debris cascaded after it, wedging into place, creating a tangled barrier that completely blocked the passage. The jaguar's reaction was instantaneous and terrifying. It snarled, a sound that went beyond hearing, that resonated in the chest cavity, in the bones, that spoke of fury and frustration in equal measure. The predator threw itself at the barrier, testing it with paws that could crush a man's skull, with strength that could drag prey 3 times its weight into trees. The log held. Physics didn't care about rage.
"Go,"
Sturgis urged.
"It'll find another way around, but we'll have time."
They scrambled up the far wall, Corian actually leading despite his compromised physiology, his adrenaline analog overriding gravity's tyranny. Behind them, the jaguar's roars echoed through the ravine, rage incarnate. The beacon was exactly where the map said it would be, a small weathered structure in a clearing that nature was steadily reclaiming. Solar panels cracked but functional. An antenna array, corroded but intact. A manual activation switch that required actual physical force to engage. Sturgis hit it. Nothing happened for a long moment. Then, with a whine that climbed into ultrasonic frequencies, the beacon powered up. Decades-old capacitors charged. The antenna began broadcasting on emergency frequencies.
Will it work?
Clune asked.
"It's working right now,"
Sturgis said.
"Coalition monitors will pick up the signal within hours. Rescue will take longer. Maybe a day, maybe 2. But they'll come."
Corian sank to the ground, his silica-based body finally giving in to exhaustion.
We made it. We actually made it.
"Yeah,"
Sturgis said quietly.
"You did."
6 weeks later, the Academic Review Board convened on Orbital Station Kepler. The Amazon was a green smudge below. 3 students stood before assembled academics, representatives from a dozen coalition species, come to hear testimony about the incident that had nearly killed 3 students. Clune went first, his testimony technical. He spoke of biodiversity indices, pharmaceutical applications, educational value, informative but safe. Zorik spoke second, his words few but weighty. He described physical challenges, adaptation required, respect for a planet that demanded excellence, appreciated but expected. Then Corian stood. The Glypton who had boarded the Venture 6 weeks ago would have delivered a carefully calculated statement, hitting all the required diplomatic notes while revealing nothing genuine. That Corian was gone.
I have spent considerable time since our rescue, he began, his translator rendering his words with perfect clarity, reviewing the Galactic Concordance's classification of Earth. It is currently designated as a Class 4 Deathworld, a planet hostile to most recognized forms of complex life, suitable only for its native species. He paused, his silica-based body catching the light. This classification is incorrect. Murmurs around the room. One of the senior academics, a Vrelian with 3 eyes, leaned forward.
Cadet Corian, this classification is based on extensive environmental analysis. The data is quite clear.
The data is incomplete,
Corian interrupted. Not rudely, but with absolute conviction.
Earth is not a death world. Death worlds are chaotic, random, hostile. They break their inhabitants through sheer malevolence. Earth is none of these things.
He looked at each board member in turn.
Earth is a crucible. The distinction is critical. A death world destroys indiscriminately. A crucible forges deliberately. Every challenge Earth presents, the gravity, the weather, the predators, the disease, the sheer overwhelming complexity of its ecosystems, every single one is a test. And those who pass emerge stronger, more adaptable, more capable than they were before.
Clune and Zorik stood straighter, unconsciously.
We arrived on Earth protected by the finest technology the Coalition could provide. We lasted exactly 3 hours before that technology failed completely. We should have died. The mathematical probability of our survival, given the variables, was negligible.
Corian's voice carried a weight it had never held before.
But we didn't die. Because Instructor Sturgis, one human, with tools your species would have discarded millennia ago, kept us alive, using nothing but knowledge and will. He navigated by magnetic compass and paper maps. He treated my poisoning with plants he recognized by sight. He built a trap using logs and vines and physics.
The Virilian academic clicked her mandibles thoughtfully.
You're suggesting that humanity's technological simplicity is actually advantageous?
I'm suggesting that humanity's relationship with technology is fundamentally different from ours,
Corian said.
We use technology to isolate ourselves from our environments, to control, to regulate, to sanitize. Humans use technology as a tool, but they never forget that it's just a tool. When it fails, they adapt. When it's not available, they improvise. They remain connected to the physical reality that we've tried to transcend.
He paused, remembering the storm, the fever, the jaguar's roar.
Earth didn't make humanity weak. It made them versatile, resilient, creative in ways that species from garden worlds can barely comprehend. The Galactic Concordance should not fear humanity's origins. It should respect them. Because humanity was forged in fire, and it shows.
The room was silent for a long moment. Then the chairman spoke.
Your recommendation for Earth's reclassification?
Class 2 Crucible World,
Corian said without hesitation.
Hostile, yes. Challenging, absolutely. But not malevolent. Educational. For those strong enough to learn from it.
3,000 kilometers below, in a small bar in Manas, Ephraim Sturgis watched the review board broadcast on a scratched screen behind the counter. He'd been teaching for 15 years. This wasn't his first rescue. Wouldn't be his last. But it was the first time he'd heard a student actually understand. On the screen, Corian concluded his testimony. The board members were already conferring, their body language suggesting Corian's arguments had hit home. Sturgis lifted his glass, local kachaka, strong enough to clean engine parts, and allowed himself a small, knowing smile.
Welcome to Earth, kid,
he said to the screen.
Glad you survived the lesson.
Outside, the Amazon went about its business, indifferent as always. The planet that had killed 99% of everything that had ever lived on it simply existed, patient and eternal. Sturgis finished his drink and ordered another. He'd be back out there soon enough. Earth's classroom never closed.